Well, welcome everyone. Thank you very much for joining me. Hello, my name is Lior Samfiru. You know who I am, I hope. I'm the employment lawyer. Of course, I'm one of the founding partners of Samfiru Tumarkin LLP, and I'm here for you to answer questions. This is your employment law live Q&A session where you can get answers about everything to do with employment law. Questions about your job, your boss, your job security, losing your job, your severance package, discrimination, mistreatment. Man, I can go on. You get the idea, though. If you're working, if you have a job, if you're lost your job, you want to know what your legal rights are, what does the law provide for you, you're in the right place to get those answers. Again, I'm Lior Samfiru, the employment lawyer. I'm one of the founding partners of Samfiru Tumarkin LLP. We're the largest employee side firm in Canada. You can find us in Ontario, in BC, and in Alberta. And if you're in one of those provinces, you're in the right place. You're in the right place to get answers. You're in the right place to get educated about your rights and to arm yourself with the knowledge so no one can take advantage of you. It's the whole point. If you know the law, if you know the rights, no one can take advantage of you. No one can push you around, bully you, threaten you, because you know what your rights are. You know what to do. And I can start right now by asking a question about your legal rights. Now, before we get started and answer questions, I want to give you some other contact information. Maybe you want to reach out to me and my team off social media. You want to have a private chat or a private email exchange. Very, very easy to do that. Just go to employmentlawyer.ca. That address is on the screen right now, employmentlawyer.ca. And you can read a lot there about your rights. You can get phone numbers there, email addresses there. If you prefer, you can fill out a form. It's all there at employmentlawyer.ca. But right now, for the next 30 minutes, you have me here for you live. So you can ask me questions right now. You can tell me what the issue is, what your boss is doing or not doing. If it touches and surrounds employment law, I can answer. I can tell you what you need to know. So I'm going to start answering questions right now. If you're watching, you can listen, of course, but you can also ask your question. This is much more interesting. If I get a bunch of questions that I can answer for this session, don't wait till the end of it. Ask right now. All right, let's see our first question for the day. That one comes to us from Devin. Devin says, I was let go after 2.5 months, just shy of the end of probation. I wasn't given any formal training when asked, am I owed anything? So here's the thing. Devin says that he was let go after 2.5 months just before the end of probation. Well, wait a second. How does Devin know that he was on probation? Remember, probation is not automatic. Just because you start a new job does not mean you're on probation. There's no such thing as automatically in the first 3 months you're on probation. The only time you're on probation for the first 3 months is if you signed an employment agreement that says that. Okay? And if you sign an employment agreement that says you're on probation for the first 3 months and we can let you go for any reason during that time, then yeah, maybe you're on probation, and that may mean that the company does not have to pay you anything. So Devin, ultimately this comes down to whether or not in fact you are on probation. And even if you are, so I said right off the bat, you weren't on, maybe you weren't, but even if you were, even then, there's still ways to get around that probationary term in the employment agreement. So you may not be on probation legally and still are owed severance. Now, here's the thing. The issue here, Devin, is not really that they let you go without good reason. It's simply a question of, do they owe you severance? And yes, even after 2.5 months, you're absolutely owed severance. And often that severance, even after 2.5 months, is calculated in months, not days, not weeks. So you may have only worked for 2.5 months, depending on your job and your age, etc. You could be owed 2, 3, 4, 5 months of severance. Yeah, you could get 5 months severance, even if you only work for a company for 2 months. So that's why it's so important to let us do our job. Call us at the office, Devin. You can get that address through employmentlawyer.ca. I want to see your employment agreement. I want to see what you signed, because there's a probably good chance that even though you were there for 2.5 months, you could be owed severance that's measured in months. Okay? Very important to do that. Now, this is actually a good time, as we wait for the next questions, to tell you how you can find out yourself about your severance. If you lost your job, if you're curious, if you just are worried about losing your job and you want to know, hey, what would I be owed? How much severance? 2 months, 8 months? Well, here's what you do. Easy. Go to pocketemploymentlawyer.ca. Again, pocketemploymentlawyer.ca. You can use your cell phone, you can use your laptop, doesn't matter. Go to pocketemploymentlawyer.ca. You can see our severance calculator tool there. First thing you'll see, severance calculator tool. You can use that, answer a few questions, and you find out how much severance you are owed. Doesn't matter if you work for a day, for a month, for 55 years. It works just the same. And by the way, completely free, completely anonymous. All right. You don't have to put in your name, the company's name. You don't have to put in where you live. It's there for you. It's free and anonymous. So check out, again, pocketemploymentlawyer.ca. I bet you anything that the amount that you're actually owed, that you can find out when you use a calculator, is a heck of a lot more than what you think you are owed. All right. That's why it's so important to go to pocketemploymentlawyer.ca if you want to know how much you're owed. All right. Now that we know that, we can continue answering questions. But again, you're there watching. Fantastic. Thank you for joining me, Lior Samfiru, the employment lawyer. But ask your question as well. I am live and wanting to answer your question. I can talk about whatever I want, but I'd rather answer your specific question, solve your workplace problems. So ask your question right now. Just like our next individual here, Ra1957, who has a question. I'm 55 years old, and I currently work for a company for 21 years. The owner is selling the company. The new owner wants all employees to work for them. Need guidance on what my rights are. Well, so here's the thing. Ultimately, it comes down to whether or not you're going to accept the job. You don't have to accept the job with a buyer, but if you don't accept the job, you're still going to be owed severance, but you may not be owed your full severance. If you don't have a good reason as to why you don't want to work with a buyer, you just don't feel like it, then you're not going to get your full severance. You're only going to get a portion of your severance. If you have a good reason, okay, as to why you don't want to work for the buyer, maybe the job pays less, maybe it's a relocation, maybe it's a demotion. If you have a good reason, then you don't have to accept the job and you still get your full severance. And for you, after 21 years, you could be looking at 18 to 24 months of severance. That's what's at stake here. Now, ultimately, if you're not even offered a job, of course you get your full severance. So my best advice is this: decide if you want to take the job. If you're not sure you want to or you don't want to, let's talk about it. And I can assess what you're owed and I can make sure you get your severance. The company may say, oh no, you quit because you didn't take the job. Nonsense. You didn't quit. You are owed severance if you don't take the job in a sale of a business. We just have to deal with the reasons why you didn't take it. Okay, hopefully that makes sense. For those joining us, welcome. My name is Lior Samfiru, the employment lawyer. I'm here live right now answering your questions about employment law. Just like I've just done with Ra1957 and Devin, you can do just the same and get your question answered right now on here live by me. And why wouldn't you do that, right? We all want to know our rights. We all want to know whether what our company is doing is legal. You don't have to worry about that. I can just tell you right now. Next questions coming in. Let's get to answering. You ask as well. Paul on Facebook says, my former employer sold his business to a new company that does the exact same work. All of the employees were offered positions within the new company with the exception of one. Is that single employee entitled to severance or termination pay? Is the purchasing company responsible for the severance? So absolutely, that employee that was not offered a job is absolutely owed severance, and it's the seller, the selling company that's owed. So what happened is his employment was terminated. The new company didn't have the obligation to offer him a job. Because they didn't, his employment was terminated. So the selling company, who is now no longer employing him, owes him full severance. And again, I don't know how long he's worked there, Paul. I don't know if he was in the senior role or junior role, but that severance could be as much as 2 years pay. Not 2 weeks, not 2 months. It could be as much as 2 years pay. So you asked the question here, Paul. Fantastic. But do the next step and tell this person, tell that colleague of yours, former colleague, to reach out to me and my team. That person can do that through employmentlawyer.ca. Employmentlawyer.ca. We'll make sure that this person gets their full severance. Not a couple of weeks per year, none of that nonsense. Get their full entitlements. It's easy to resolve when you know what you're doing. So, Paul, thanks for that question. Fantastic question. Have them reach out to employmentlawyer.ca. All right. So Melanie, you can ask questions in the chat box. We're waiting for your questions. So absolutely. Welcome to the session. I'm here for you. Ask the question. You got me here live. I'll answer it. Our next question. I like having our regular viewer, N. Stinson, asks a question. If the employee is owed 11 months of severance, is off work due to disability for 11 months, and then leaves with constructive dismissal, do they have to repay the disability payments? No, you don't have to repay disability payments. Now, what happens is if you're getting money from the company while you're still getting disability benefits, the insurance company may say, okay, we're not going to continue paying you for now because you have money coming in, but you're not going to repay money. Okay, you're not going to have to repay that money. It's just going to be on a go forward basis. It may or may not impact your disability benefits. Although I'm not actually sure I understand the scenario. Someone is owed 11 months, is off work. Yeah, no, I understand what you're saying. So the person that's been off work while they're off, pursue their constructive dismissal case. Best advice here, by the way, there's also ways to structure this in a way that the income that the person gets from the company may be tax-free, and then it doesn't impact anything at all to do with the disability benefits. So this is just reason 2,458 why it's so important to call me, get some legal advice if and when you have a workplace issue. That's a lot of reasons. That's just one of them. So thank you for that question. Great questions as always. Next question from Wilfred on Facebook. One company banned me from employment because they had made moves on my girlfriend at the time. She ended up going with them. I got upset and took days off, and they let me go and ban me for missing days. Now I can't go back because they're blackballing me over that. So, so if in fact you took days off that were not allowed, so if you took days off that were not authorized, that could be cause for discipline. If you're scheduled to go to work and just decide not to go off and you don't have permission, if you decide not to go in and you don't have permission, that's cause for discipline. Now, that may not mean that they can necessarily fire you. So you say stress days. Did you have a doctor's note? If you have a doctor's note saying you can't work, they have to give you the time off. They can't do anything to you. But if you're saying I'm stressed out, I'm not coming in, but I don't have permission, that's a problem. Now, again, that doesn't mean necessarily they can fire you, depending on how many days off you took, depending on whether they warned you, hey, you better come in or else. So context here is important. But if you just took a few days off and you came in and they fired you, but they didn't warn you, it was only a couple of days, that firing you may be too extreme and you may be owed severance. You can't make the company hire you back. You can't stop them from firing you. What you can do is make sure you get severance, and that could be months and months of pay. So that's what we need to discuss. I want to understand what you told them, if you had a doctor's note, how many days off you had, did they warn you to come back to work or else? So we need to discuss all these things, Wilfred. That's why you need to reach out to me and we can have that chat through employmentlawyer.ca. You see that address below, again, employmentlawyer.ca. Great questions, fantastic questions. For those that have just joined us now, we're about halfway through. I'm Lior Samfiru, the employment lawyer. I'm here with you, for you, answering questions. I'm with Samfiru Tumarkin LLP. I'm one of the founding partners of that law firm. And we operate across Ontario, BC, and Alberta. So you know what to do. If you're wondering about your legal issue, legal problem, you have a legal question, ask it right now. Tell me what it is. I'll give you that answer. All right. Just like Paula. Paula has a question. Says, what options do you have if dealing with bullying and there is no harassment or safety policy in place at work? I see. I asked HR and they said there was nothing formal in place, which seems odd to me. Well, it's not that it's just odd, it's illegal. Okay, a company has to have policies in place. And if you can prove the harassment, okay, because remember, if someone is harassing you or bullying you, they're not going to admit it. But if you can prove that you're being mistreated, that you're being bullied or harassed, and the company doesn't even have policies to address that, that could itself be a constructive dismissal. because it's illegal. It's as if the company terminated you illegally. Now they owe you compensation. But the first step is to prove that bullying. Remember, no one's going to admit it. So how do we prove it? Do we have a recording? Do we have something in writing? Do we have a witness that's willing to corroborate that? So those are the questions. If you don't have something in writing yet, or the proof, let's create it. Send an email to someone confirming what happened, or have a recording. Do something that can show us, that can allow us to prove what's been happening. But if you're being bullied, harassed, mistreated, the company has to deal with it. And if they don't have a policy in place, ridiculous. These days, legally, it's not that it's a good idea to have a policy. It's a legal obligation, legal requirement. So Paula, if you're able to prove this harassment, if you have the ability to show it, I want you to reach out to me as soon as possible. You can do that through employmentlawyer.ca. Again, employmentlawyer.ca. All right, next question. Fantastic questions, by the way, guys. Really good questions. Let's see. Our next question is from Deepak. Deepak on YouTube says, I'm a CPA student and I got fired without cause. I checked the Employment Standards Act and it states that students aren't covered by the act. Would I be entitled to severance under common law? Yeah, don't forget about the Employment Standards Act, irrelevant. Your entitlements come from common law. So you're absolutely owed severance. And that could be a little bit or that could be a ton. It could be as much as 2 years' pay. So Deepak, what you do is very simple. You go to pocketemploymentlawyer.ca, again, pocketemploymentlawyer.ca, and use our severance calculator tool. Again, severance calculator tool, it's there, it's free, it's anonymous, it's for you, and you can find out in about, I don't know, 7.5 seconds how much severance you're owed. Okay, check it out right now, and you'll probably see that you're owed severance that's worth a few months' pay, even if you're fairly junior. Happy to help you get that severance, easy to do. Again, pocketemploymentlawyer.ca. So people say, well, will the severance calculator work for me? Two things have to happen for the severance calculator to work for you. Number one is you had to have a job and lost a job. And number two, not unionized. So that can't work for unionized employees. Unionized employees have other rights. But if you're not part of a union and you had a job and lost it, guess what? You can use the severance calculator to find out how much you're owed. And you, again, go to pocketemploymentlawyer.ca. All right, Melanie has our next question. Melanie has a two-part question here. Melanie says, I was employed by a deputy director for 11 months. The company went through a restructuring and the new contract confirms that my role is unchanged. This month, he said my role will change to a lower position and not to think of it as a demotion. I refused and sent an email refusing the demotion and wanting to keep my position. He fired me immediately without cause and created reason. So here's the thing, Melanie. He's allowed to let you go. It may be completely unfair. It may even be unethical. But legally, you can't be let go as long as severance is paid. Okay? That's the key here. So the key is not, did he have a good reason? Did he not have a good reason? Should he or shouldn't he? The question is that of severance. Now, you worked for 11 months. I don't know exactly your role or your age, but even after 11 months, you're probably going to be owed 3-4 months of severance. Okay? Months, not days, not weeks. So that's the question. If you got your full severance, legally, the company's done nothing wrong. Legally. Maybe morally they have, but not legally. It's the question of severance. So that's what you need to do. You can also call me to find out how much severance you're owed, or just like I've been saying, go to pocketemploymentlawyer.ca and use our severance calculator to find out how much you're owed. So that's the way to do it. And again, I know it's unfair. And if I were you, I'd feel the same way. I'd feel, wait a second, why was I let go? That's not right. And it's not. But legally, they can do that as long as you get severance. Now, you say that they fired you for cause, misconduct. Well, listen, if you did something horrible, if you stole, if you committed fraud, guess what? They have cause. But unless you did something like that, of course it's not cause. Of course you're owed severance. So if the company is trying to say that they have cause so as to avoid paying you severance, you better call me. Okay, Melanie? So you got to reach out to me ASAP, today. Okay? You can do that through employmentlawyer.ca. Again, employmentlawyer.ca. That's the website. That's where you go. Check it out. Call me or email me, and we'll get going to help you get the compensation that you're owed. So Deepak has a follow-up question. Deepak says, I also had a termination clause in my contract, which states that my severance would be paid according to the Employment Standards Act. Would I still be entitled to severance according to common law? Well, I'd have to see the employment agreement. In some cases, maybe 10, 15, maybe 20% of cases, when a company tries to get rid of the common law, they're not done that successfully. In about 80% of cases, even though they may have tried to limit your severance, they're not doing that properly. So the only way I can tell you is I need to see that employment agreement. Once I see that employment agreement, I can tell you very quickly, yes, it limits you. No, it doesn't. So easy to do. That's why you have to reach out to me. I have to actually not just read the termination clause. I need to read the entire agreement, and then I'll be able to tell you if you're owed under common law. But even without seeing it, just based on how things go, about 80% chance that you are owed entitlements under the common law. Okay. But again, let me see it and I'll tell you. Hopefully that helps, Deepak. So you know what to do. You reach me through employmentlawyer.ca. Melanie, you say thank you. So I'm looking forward to connecting with you as well. See how easy it is? You still have some 8-10 minutes or so to ask questions right now. You still have me here. But remember, I'm not just some guy that shows up on social media to answer questions. I do this for half hour a week, but the rest of my time, I'm solving workplace issues. I practice law. I help people. So if you're suffering or dealing with a workplace issue, yeah, it's a good first step to ask the question right here. But I can't roll up my sleeves and get to work for you on this session. To do that, you got to connect with me off social media. We need to have a private chat. I need to understand better, and I can then get involved in helping you resolve that issue. One thing I want everyone to keep in mind, that when it comes to employment law, when it comes to the legal issues that you need help resolving, in the vast majority of cases, those matters can resolve very quickly and on very good terms. So sometimes people say, oh my God, I don't want to call a lawyer because it's going to take 3 years to get the matter resolved. I don't want that. Nonsense. Not with employment law. Okay. Probably we're looking at a few weeks, not months, not years. So that's why I don't want anyone to be scared of the legal process. Now, other issues, if you have a divorce issue or personal injury issues, those can take a long time. Absolutely. Employment law is different usually. So don't be afraid of the process. Okay. If you have rights, it's not going to be difficult to enforce them. All right. So reach out to me and employmentlawyer.ca, the way to do that. For those joining us for the last few minutes, I'm Lior Samfiru, the employment lawyer with Samfiru Tumarkin LLP, with you, for you, answering your questions live right now on employment law. Next question comes from Rosa. Rosa says, I'm in a sales position and just gave my notice. I will be going to a competitor, and I'm worried I'm worried once this is realized by upper management, I won't be given my bonus before I leave. Am I still entitled to it? If you're owed your bonus, you're owed your bonus. The fact that you're leaving to go work for a competitor does not mean that they can deprive you of the bonus. If you've met the criteria for the bonus, obviously, I don't know what the criteria are. You didn't tell me, and I don't know if you've met them. But if you're owed the bonus, you met the criteria, you did A, B, and C that you needed to do to get the bonus, they have to pay it. Even if you've left before the payment is made, even if you go work for a competitor, even if you, frankly, go and badmouth them afterwards online. Don't do that. Don't ever badmouth them. But my point is, even if you were to do that, you still are the bonus because you've earned it. It's done. It's over, right? So a company can't hold your bonus hostage because they're not happy about what you did after you no longer work for them. So if the company is trying to do that, if they're trying to keep your money hostage, easy. Call me. Usually one email or letter from me gets that resolved. So Rosa, now you know, any problems, any issues, employmentlawyer.ca, the address to get the phone numbers there if you prefer phone, email address if you prefer email, fill out a form if you prefer that. No matter how you want to connect, what you're comfortable with, we got you covered, employmentlawyer.ca. That's the way to do it. That's the place to go. But right now, still, hey, you got me for the next few minutes. Why not just take advantage of me being here? Ask your question. Make sure that when you turn off your computer today, you feel better. You know more, and you feel more empowered because you know your rights. Easy to do. You know, we talk often in these sessions about this concept of constructive dismissal. You may have heard me mention that earlier. Oftentimes there's confusion about what constructive dismissal is. So I wanted to touch on that, as we wait for the last question or two. So constructive dismissal is the idea that the company did something to you that gives you the right to consider your employment as being terminated. And because it's terminated, the company has to pay you severance. So we know what a regular dismissal is. You come in, company says, sorry, we have to let you go. That's a regular dismissal. A constructive dismissal is different. Constructive dismissal means the company is not telling you they're letting you go. They're not necessarily planning on letting you go. They've done something to you, like they changed your job, or they reduced your pay, or changed your hours. They demoted you, or relocation. They made a change, a big change, significant change to the terms of employment. Well, that could mean that you now have the right to say, oh, not so fast. By imposing this change on me, I can now consider my employment as being terminated, okay? And now I can make you pay me severance. So I'm gone. Forget it. I'm not staying here. I'm not accepting this demotion or pay decrease. I'm treating my employment as being terminated. So that's what a constructive dismissal is. So if you had your job changed, yes. Your pay reduced, absolutely. Even in a situation where you're being harassed or bullied and now it's difficult to continue working, that can mean by creating that situation, that poisoned work environment, you can consider your employment as being terminated. Now you have to get severance, and that severance can be as much as 2 years' pay. So I mentioned pocketemploymentlawyer.ca. We have a tool there at pocketemploymentlawyer.ca that allows you to determine whether, in fact, you've been constructively dismissed. So if you're not sure if your matter is a constructive dismissal, just go to pocketemploymentlawyer.ca, use the tool there, and then we can find out exactly what you're owed. All right, and if it's a constructive dismissal. All right, let's see. Last questions. Jack has a question. Jack is joining us from YouTube. How long is an employer required to continue a health benefits plan for an employee who is off work or sick, disabled? So the reality is that an employer is not required to continue benefits for an employee that's off work, just like they're not required to pay them. But two things that I want to say about that. Number one is an employer may have a policy, an internal policy that says we'll pay you for 6 months or 12 months or whatever it is, and then they have to follow that policy. The other thing is this: even though they don't have to continue benefits, let's say that they decide to do it anyway. So let's say you've been off for a while for medical reasons, they continue your benefits. If they're doing that, they can't just decide to cut it off. So just because they didn't have to continue your benefits to begin with, if they decide to do it, they can't just necessarily cut you off. That could now become a constructive dismissal. So if they say, no, we're not going to continue benefits, just like we're not going to pay you, not nice maybe, but they can do that. But once they continue it anyway, they can't say, well, now we've decided it's too much. That could be a problem. So if you're in that situation, Jack, please reach out again, employmentlawyer.ca. Okay. So let's see. Last question of the day, I think, would be from Stephen. I was initially asked to work overtime and agreed to do so. A few days into the week, a manager asked us to clock out early by the end of the week in order to offset these hours. Is this allowed? Of course not. Absolutely not. Completely illegal. Can't do that. If you worked, you have to get paid for the time that you worked. You can't be told to clock out early if you're still working. So in that situation, by all means, you can contact actually the Ministry of Labor for that, because it's illegal. Can contact the Ministry of Labor, by the way, if you lost your job, if it's a constructive dismissal, if it's a workplace harassment. But if it's an overtime issue, a vacation pay issue, a holiday pay issue, absolutely you can and you should contact the Ministry of Labor. Okay, by all means, do that. Let's see if there's anything else I'm missing here. No, I think I'm caught up on everything. Guys, this was a great session. Thank you very much for joining me. My name is Lior Samfiru. I'm the employment lawyer, one of the founding partners of Samfiru, Tumarkin, LLP. I'll be back here next week. Please don't wait. I've given you the contact information. If you want to connect with me by phone or email, I'll give it to you one last time. That's employmentlawyer.ca. Again, employmentlawyer.ca. If you want to have a chat, email exchange, understand more about your rights, and get us to help you enforce those rights, that's where you go to. Thank you very much. Again, I'm Lior Samfiru. We'll see you again. Thanks all. Take care. Bye.